What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Titans Time Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Staggs. You'll notice I'm by myself in this video. Tanner had some stuff going on that he had to do, so he's not able to be here with me, but wanted to do a real quick video just to cover the Titans vs. Falcons preseason game. The Titans are 1-0 after beating the Atlanta Falcons 23-3. And man, are there a lot of things to kind of talk about with this preseason game. From the Titans defense looking better to the kicking looking better. But as always with the good, there's bad, there's in between. So in this video, we're just going to do a quick recap of all that. So starting off with the bad, as always, injuries. That's always bad, no matter who it is, especially in preseason. Luckily, none of our starters were out on the field to get hurt, but it's pretty much inevitable. I mean, if you get through a game without any injuries, hey, you're doing really good. But it really sucks for some of these guys because they're fighting for roster spots, and the longer they're injured and out, I mean, we're coming up on roster cuts here in the next couple of weeks. This week, I think the Titans have to cut down to 90 players, and then the next week they have to cut down to even more. That's something that could really affect the future of these guys unless they clear waivers and the Titans were to sign them back to the practice squad. But the injuries in this game, you have Darrington Evans, who had like 4 carries in the game. He started off the game really hot, and then I believe Mike Vrabel has come out and said that it was a knee injury. You could tell whenever he pulled up while he was running, you know, it was either a knee or hamstring. Then you also have guys like Brady Breeze, B.J. Bello, Trevon Colley, who, I mean, these are guys who can give our team more depth in certain positions, and the guys that were really fighting for those roster spots. And another injury was late in the game to Tucker McCann. Kicked I believe it was the extra point that he kicked. One of the Atlanta Falcons guys dove, trying to block it, and it was kind of a dirty hit, I guess you would say, but as soon as McCann's kicking foot hit the ground, the Falcons player landed on it, kind of bent it up a little bit. So hopefully McCann's okay, and no long-term damage has been done to his foot because he was having a really good kicking day. But now, going to some of the okay in the game, and that is the Titans' backup offensive lineman, in my opinion. Because we knew that we weren't going to see the starters out there for the offense. They've been talking about in training camp throwing all these different combinations out there, putting these different offensive linemen together, because throughout the season, like I said, you're going to have injuries, and sometimes players will have to come in, and you want them to have that chemistry from the start, from training camp, to where they can just mesh a lot easier versus you just throwing them out there to the wolves and there not being good communication between them and the other guys that are out there. So with some of our younger guys that we put out there, there was some miscommunications, and Mike Vrabel even said that they were blitzing the shit out of Logan Woodside, and there were a couple of times those blitzes did not get picked up. Had a guy come free right up the middle, and Logan Woodside took a couple of big shots. Like, shots where you're like, ooh, okay, that's not good. Like, guys, we need to do better about this. So, hopefully, those offensive linemen will just keep improving. We can find the right combination of backups that when they come in, they'll be able to pick up the blitzes, not miss on anything, and just have that communication down so that we don't have Ryan Tannehill standing back there taking these shots and possibly getting hurt. Now, on to the good. First thing I have to mention is definitely the kicking for the Titans, because this is something that all throughout camp everyone's been talking about. Do we need to bring in another kicker? Do we really trust Tucker McCann? Brought in Sam Ficken not long ago. They've been going back and forth. Sometimes we'll get reports, okay, they made all their field goals today. Okay, Sam Ficken missed, Tucker McCann missed, 1 out of the 5 that they were kicking. But this preseason game, we got to see these guys kicked several field goals apiece, and Tucker McCann went 2 for 2 on his field goals. His longest was from 42, and Sam Ficken was 1 of 1, his longest from 44. So, not short kicks that they were given the chance to take in this game. And they drilled them. They both made their extra point that they kicked. So that was one bright spot for me. The main thing, though, that I think everyone was wanting to be focused on was the defense, because we know that this defense is completely revamped from last season. And before everyone starts, going crazy, oh, well, it was our backups, or it was Atlanta's second and third string, let's not get too crazy. Here's what I want to say. The reason that this was such a bright spot was not because our backups were doing this to other backups, which is good, though, because all of these guys are professional athletes now. They were good enough to at least make it on an NFL team right now. They may not be on the final 53-man roster, but as of right now, they are on the team. And when they're getting the better of their peers or other players in the league, that can be a bright spot. No matter if it's first string, second string, third string, whatever. It is a bright spot and something to look forward to, because our defense was flying around. We did have some of our starters out there playing. And just to mention, Tierre Tart, the guy, they've been praising him for his off-season work, everything else. And he really showed it in this game. I mean, I believe he's going to win that tackle position for our defense. And he's going to be a nightmare for offensive linemen, especially if he can keep playing like he was last night, because he was just pushing the interior offensive linemen around and opening plays up for other guys to get in the backfield, make tackle for to get tackle for losses, causing runners or quarterbacks to have to move to a different spot. So he looked really, really good. Then you also have Christian Fulton playing on the outside. He ended up with a pass breakup. But the biggest thing is our defense is flying around to the football. They're not just sitting back. The only times I feel like we really seen them back off from the receivers and give them that 10-yard cushion was when it was 3rd and 20. So I'm willing to give them that cushion as long as we actually still dial up some pressure so that the quarterback doesn't have all day to stand back there and allow someone to get open by just running around. That's exactly what the Titans did. They backed everyone up 10 yards on these 3rd and longs, and they brought pressure. They didn't let the quarterback sit back there and get comfy and just sit in the pocket like, okay, I have time. All right, now I'll air it out and we'll convert the 3rd down. No, they sent more than just 3 guys, which is what we wanted to see from the Titans. Everyone's been talking about it, though. The man that showed up big is the 4th round pick, Rashad Weaver. He finished the game with 3 total tackles, 2 of them were solo, 1.5 sacks, and 2 tackles for loss, and also had a pass deflection. Almost ended up with an interception off of it because he knew he couldn't get to the quarterback, so he put his hands up, tipped the ball, and again, he was looking for it. It just fell behind him before he was able to locate it and catch it. I mean, he's looking like a man amongst kids out there with these backups. He was getting pressure on the quarterback, blowing plays up, even ran down on a special teams play, made the tackle. If everything with the legal issues blows over, he's good, nothing comes of it, then he can be a real problem and a real good depth player for the Titans. And that's what we need on the edge. Now, Mike Vrabel did come out and say there is some things he still needs to work on from his pad height, just really setting the edge. But I like what I've seen from him in this first game. Real bright spot. And then you have a guy like David Long, who Tanner and I were both high on last year whenever he had to come in after Jayon Brown got hurt. He's a guy who flies around, makes plays. There were several Titans on one screen pass that the Falcons tried to do. They weren't falling for it. They seen the running back kind of slip out, got in front of him, and got a little pressure and just caused A.J. McCarron to have to throw the ball into the dirt, which is what we want to see. David Long also skied up for an interception that, when we see it, it was one of those jaw-dropping interceptions at the time, because you're like, okay, we see you. Keep that up. Keep that energy up. So just the defense flying around as a whole, it gives me hope for when our starters are out there playing. And that's why I say that it matters, even though it was most of our second and third string defense versus the Falcons' second and third string offense. We weren't seeing our guys fly around like this last year, working together like they are now. So if our backups are doing this, then you know that our starters are all carrying that same energy. They are bringing energy this year to the defensive side of the ball. We've been hearing about it in camp too. So that is going to be a major thing to keep a watch on, especially in this next preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because I believe we will see some starters out there for just a little while. So let's see if against the defending Super Bowl champs, they can bring that same energy and our defense keep flying around like they have been. Now, I hit on Darrington Evans a little bit earlier. I was really hoping for some big things from him this game, because last year with the injuries, this was his chance to really solidify himself as our number 2 running back behind Derrick Henry. His first carry, he took it for 15 yards and was probably only making one guy miss away from carrying it for a touchdown. But injuries have crept back up on him again. Now, I'm hoping that this is not something where he ends up being labeled as an injury-prone guy. I'm hoping that it was just kind of a coincidence that this happened and he'll be able to recover, get back out there, and everything be fine. But it is something to kind of think about after the injuries that he had last year, and now in this preseason game gets 4 carries and he's out for the rest of the game. I believe he's day-to-day, so hopefully, he can get back out there before the regular season and really show us what he's wanting to show us. Now, moving on from Darrington Evans to some other takeaways that I have from this game. Of course, we have the backup quarterback situation. You have everyone with different opinions on this. Some people were okay with either Logan Woodside or Matt Barkley. Some people say, okay, we need to go get someone else. But after watching this game, we may have some hope. I'm not going to get too high on either one of these guys, but they did show something. You have Matt Barkley, who came in the second half and hasn't been at Titans camp that long, so his playbook is limited, and he was going to be more willing to drive the ball down the field. Whenever he come in the second half, he went 5 of 8 for 54 yards and a touchdown to Miller Forrestall. I mean, the linebacker on that route just got lost. Forrestall ran a great route, got open. Matt Barkley put the ball right where it needed to be. So he come in and he showed a little something. But the first half belonged to Logan Woodside, who went 10 of 15 for 84 yards, and he also had a touchdown pass. And it was a beautiful back shoulder, perfect throw to Cam Batson, who went up, made a play over the defender, reaching, of course it was going to Cam Batson's back shoulder. He went right over the defender, grabbed it. Like I said, beautiful throw. And Woodside, he faced a lot of blitzes. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, Vrabel said that the Falcons blitzed the shit out of Logan Woodside. And they did. They were doing everything they could to try and get in his head and make him make a mistake. But for the most part, he was able to get the ball out to his guys and make some plays. Also, earlier I did say he took some shots, and most of those shots came from a blitz right up the middle that his offensive line didn't pick up. And let's face it, he just didn't have time to get the ball out on that because no one was open. So rather than trying to force it to someone and have a turnover, throw an interception, he just took the sack and held on to the football. Going to the receivers, unfortunately, there's a couple names that we didn't hear called, and really it could determine who ends up rounding out our receiving core for the regular season on our 53-man roster. because you have Des Fitzpatrick, who has been struggling in training camp. Haven't been hearing much about him. As of today, when this video is being recorded, which is Sunday, at practice today, he had 3 consecutive drops in a row right in front of John Robinson. Granted, he is a rookie. We've mentioned several times, rookies have growing pains. But that is not the impression you want to leave as a 4th round pick right in front of your GM. And really what it can come down to is, at this point, he may just be in his own head. And that's usually what happens a lot of times with receivers when they start having drops or start doing bad. They get in their own head and that cycle just continues. But going back to the preseason game against the Falcons, it didn't look like Dez done much to get open. And then you have his counterpart, Racey McMath, who people have been a little bit more high on McMath in training camp, and it's looking like he could potentially edge out Des Fitzpatrick if either of these guys make the Titans' final cut of receivers. And one thing that Racey McMath brings to the table is he can be a gunner on special teams, on punts. He can go down and cover. That's not really Des Fitzpatrick's game. I mean, that's not what he does. He plays receiver, and that could really hurt him. You have another guy like Chester Rogers who, I mean, after this game, he may have just solidified himself as the return man for the Titans. He had a long punt return, and Vrabel even said this, and I'm glad that he did, because the blocking was great on that punt return. But Chester Rogers did make some guys miss, and really almost had a touchdown. One of his own guys kind of got in his way, and he kind of shoved him like, hey man, come on, move. I need by you right here and I can get in. He was looking like a bright spot. Really, out of all the guys fighting for one of these receiver spots, Mason Kinsey, he really went out in this game and made it a point to say, okay, you possibly need to keep me around. He had some big 3rd down catches. I've seen a lot of Titans fans talking about how Mason Kinsey is what the Titans hoped that Adam Humphries would be. I mean, he made some tough catches. He had 4 receptions for 51 yards. He was only targeted 4 times, so he caught every pass that was thrown to him. So he was really making a case for himself. Going back to Racey McMath, he got targeted only 2 times, didn't have a catch. One of the plays, he did have to turn into a defensive back a little bit and knock the ball away from the Falcons DB trying to intercept it. But, we need to see more from some of these guys, or from some of these draft picks, or else they may not be on this 53-man roster. So, those guys have a couple more days of training camp, and before the Titans have to make some cuts, which I don't think any of those guys would be getting cut on this first round of cuts. I just personally do not see that happening. So they have a little bit longer in training camp and maybe a couple more preseason games to prove, hey, I need to be on this final roster, or even make the Titans consider, if they cut them and they clear waivers, to bring them back to the practice squad so that they can maybe activate them later on if they need them. One final thing I want to talk about, guys, and this is jumping back to the defense. No, I've been jumping around all crazy here, but just keep up with me here. Our defense total in this game had 5 sacks. I mean, we would have loved to have seen that in the regular season last year. In one game, our defense having 5 sacks. And again, yes, it was against Atlanta's backups. Yes, it was our backups. But this is what gives us so much hope, and what has a lot of Titans fans so hyped for our defense this year is, like I said, they are flying around and making plays. They are getting pressure on the quarterback. And not only are they getting pressure on the quarterback, they're actually finishing the play and getting the quarterback down, which is what we need. I look forward to going into this next week, seeing more of training camp. I'm going to be at the Titans live practice tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to seeing all these guys out on the field, seeing what maybe Des Fitzpatrick can do tomorrow, seeing what Racey McMath can do, and hoping to see a lot of other guys and what they bring to this team, and if they can make this final 53-man roster for the Titans. Also look forward to them practicing against the Bucs and playing them this next week. That's all I have today, guys. This has been Titans Time, and as always, tighten up.